Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm the Dorky Reader. I'm Michaela, and I'm very awkward. But that's okay. I'm a mom with 3 kids, and my favorite hobby, my only hobby really, is reading books. I read 57 books last year, and I'm hoping this next 2025 I can read 60. That would be so cool. I'm really nervous about this channel. I'm very insecure about my appearance because at 41, after 3 kids, I gained a lot of weight. So I'm also going to be doing a little bit of a weight loss journey, and maybe I can keep people posted. I started in November 1st with a new weight loss system. I won't get into details of what I'm doing because I feel like that's boring for people who want to read about books. But anyway, I'm proud to say that I've lost 19.8 pounds. I'm so close to 20. And I was really bummed when I looked at the scale this morning. It was like teetering between 20 and the other one, but it shows the 19.8 down instead. And I was like, dang it. But wish me luck. I hope to be back in healthy shape. Probably in 2 years, maybe 1 if I'm really lucky, but we'll see. Anyway, I have a big stack of books here. I wanted to go over my top 10 favorite books of 2024, and I'd say that I have chosen series as a whole, and instead of just like one book from the series, I'm going to say like this series as a book, because it's hard to pick just one book, really. Hold on, kid alert. Okay, crisis averted. Back to the BookTube channel. And I guess I should first tell you what kind of books I read in general, so that way you know if you're interested or not. I'm open to reading anything. I really am. But my preference is going to be in fantasy and science fiction. And I like romantasy as well. However, I'm kind of picky about my romantasy or my romance books. Sometimes they're cringe, and I'm not into that. I'm not into really super spicy books that some of you love, and that's great. My best friend is a huge spicy book reader. If she ever decides to do a YouTube channel, I think she should do like a spicy books of Instagram. I don't know, she should do something like that because she reads that stuff all the time. I'm talking to you. Anyway, I love fantasy, science fiction, fast-paced, action-packed, the best. I like when I do like men in the books. I like the morally gray kind of scoundrels, if you will. People who really, they are flawed. That's my kind of character that I really like or gravitate towards. And I know it's probably not very feminist of me to like this, but I like when the female characters are nice, because I resonate with that, because I don't like bullies. I don't like mean people. I didn't like them growing up in school. And when I hear someone being sassy or really kind of snarky and mean, it's not cute to me. It's like, oh, she's one of those people. I don't really like her. I don't want her to have a happy ending because she's the mean girl, you know? So that's not my kind of female lead. Not saying that they can't be powerful, they can't be all sorts of cool things, but I do like when they're nice because it makes me feel like I can connect with them better. Uh-oh, kid again. Oh my gosh. Okay, that was, I don't know how many times she did that, but I think we're back on track. This is what it's like to be a mom, trying to do something other than raise children at home. Anyway, so yes, I was talking about characters that I love. I love flawed characters. I love people who are morally gray. I like people who are rascally, maybe mischievous, and kind in their heart, like who they really are. There should be some goodness to redeem them. I'm not a fan of like super possessive guys. I mean, a little bit of jealousy can be fun in a book, not in real life. In real life, no, that's all ick. But like in a book, a little bit's okay. Just, it can't be like why'd you talk to that man, blah blah blah. Like, I don't know, I hate that stuff. So that's not going to be in any of my books that I choose as great books, just so you know. Like, I don't know. And I don't like when it's not reasonable. Like, if a character, a female character specifically, if they're like somehow this super badass warrior, which women can be warriors, they can be fierce, they can be fighting. They can also, if they are, please don't make them 5'2", like 90-pound waifs who have been starving half the book and then suddenly can like wield battle axes and are like, wah, wah, wah. That's not believable to me at all. Like, I'm like, really? She's gonna kick this like giant hulking dude's butt with her swords when she can barely like, you know, feed herself? I don't believe it. So that makes it harder for me to get into it. If she's gonna be a warrior, make her a warrior, like an orc warrior, female with big muscles, or like, you know, just a cool elf who might have supernatural abilities to make her stronger. Then I'm like, okay, I can buy into it, but don't make it just some human chick who's 5'2", 90 pounds and can. Anyway, enough about those books. Let's get on to the top 10 list. Okay, so to start, I wanted to do an honorable mention. It didn't make the cut, but only because I thought it was kind of short. But the book itself is really not what I expected, and that is Vivian Venveld's Dragon's Bait. I loved this book. I thought it was really charming in a different way. Like, when I read the title, Dragon's Bait, I assumed it was some cheesy kind of cringe. He's a dragon and he's gonna like blah blah blah, you know, like, you know what I mean. But it ended up being a story of a girl's revenge. Like, the towns that she grew up in, she was accused of witchcraft, and so she was then cast out and used as dragon's bait. But instead of being consumed by this dragon, she is, in a way, given the chance to seek vengeance for herself. And I really liked it. I really liked it. And there's a tiny, tiny, tiny smidge of romance in it, but mostly it's a story of kind of revenge and what that means for her. What does vengeance look like and how she carries it out and everything. I don't know. It was really good and I really highly recommend it. It's a great little short book, especially if you're coming close to the end of the year. It's what? Is that like the acknowledgements right there? I don't know. No, that's chapter 16. It's under 200 pages. So go for it. Check it out. Okay, now on to the real list. And coming in at number 10, this took me forever to come up with, by the way, was the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy by Stephanie Garber. I love this romance. It was so sweet to me. Here's a perfect example of a character where the main female character in this book is very kind, and she makes a mistake in the beginning. She makes a bad choice, and it's a selfish choice, and people do that. But she's not a mean person, and she's ends up entangled with this fate called Jax. And I think most of you have read this, so I'm not going to get into too much detail. I don't want to do spoilers. I'm really worried about spoiling books for people. But Stephanie Garber has this way about her with her books where it feels very topsy-turvy, magical, like an Alice in Wonderland-y kind of feeling in some ways. And kind of like in Caraval. And I feel like, because this is set in the same world as Caraval, it has that same feeling. And I like that. Some people hate it, but I really enjoy it. I enjoy when things are magical and a little bit wobbly. I don't know how to describe it. But I like that kind of book a lot. And Jax is the perfect villainous male romantic love interest. So if you want a villain for a love interest, Jax is a fantastic example. He does do some pretty wicked things. He's not a nice fate, but it turns out that throughout the course of the series, he discovers what love really is. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed watching that or reading that. It was a great series. Great job, Stephanie. All right, coming in at number 9, we have Nice Dragons Finish Last by Rachel Aaron. Let me see what my notes are for this, because I've made this video like probably 6 times now, because I keep either getting interrupted by a kid or because I forget what's actually in the book because it's been so long and I don't want to mess up saying something that's not true about the book. But yes, this book surprised me. The setting is familiar. It's from another book I read by her, Part-Time Magic, I believe it's called. And it's set in the DFZ, which is like the Detroit Free Zone. And it's a very unique kind of magic-y world. Maybe sci-fi too, but kind of, it's like an urban fantasy. And this character is not like my typical character I go for. He's a very cool, very chill, very normal guy, but he's a dragon. But he's like, compared to all the other dragons who are bloodthirsty and crazy, he's chill. He's really nice. And I would normally be bored by that, I think. Maybe there's something wrong with my head for thinking that way, but I really enjoyed his perspective. And I also really love reading a male's perspective in books. I think that it's different and it's refreshing for me. I feel like I read a lot of books that are female perspective. And I mean, you can relate to that in some levels, but it's always nice for me when I pick up a book and it's got a male main character and I still love it and I'm still into it. I'm not offended by anything. Anyway, the female character in this is super cute and feisty and fun, and they have a lot of adventure. It's like a fast-paced book. It's not boring. So if you really want a fun new urban fantasy to check out, or not new, but for you new, I would check out Rachel Aaron's Nice Dragons Finish Last. She's a fun author. I really like her world. So good job, Rachel Aaron. Okay, coming in at number 8, I have Red Winter by Annette Marie. And I loved this series. I grew up watching anime and I read manga, and I don't watch as much nowadays, especially when I rewatch it, I think, oh God, it's kind of cringe. But that said, I love Inuyasha, and this book features a kitsune, fox demon, and a shrine maiden, in a sense. And so it really checked off that little mark in my head and was like, oh, it's like Inuyasha, but it's not like Inuyasha. The story is different. Basically, this girl, she is raised believing that one day her body will be merged with this goddess, the one that she worships, that she is going to be this vessel for her god, and that they will together join as one, and that there's nothing more honorable than that she can do. So it starts off a little slow in that sense, because she's kind of a goody two-shoes and she puts up with things I wouldn't put up with. So it kind of gave me a slow start to this series. But as it goes on, she realizes some things, that maybe her bargain with this goddess is not what it seems. And so she kind of battles internally with this idea of her faith and what she believes to be righteous and good and what she wants to do for her faith. And then also this strong need and want to live and to actually live her life the way she does, because her whole life she's kept her body pure, no bad foods, no anything. So she's kind of like she feels a little jaded, like this isn't the bargain I was promised, and I don't know if I like that. In the meanwhile, she runs into this fox god or fox demon, whatever creature, and she discovers that he is cursed in a sense. And because he helped her, she's helping him, and they kind of ally themselves together to fight evil and to remove the curse on his fox demon self. I can't speak apparently. But anyway, great book, especially if you love manga, especially if you love anime. Lots of great Japanese mythology woven within. The Tengu in this is so cool. I really love the Tengu character. And anyway, I highly recommend it. Okay, so coming in at number 7, we have my only middle grade, The False Prince. And this book is a fantasy, however, it's like not magical. It's the type of fantasy that's like just set in a different world. It's like a great starter to grim, dark, political kind of fantasy books. It's like a kid's version of that, but it's really good. It has a lot of twists and turns, and the character is really fun to read, like through his eyes. He's got a mouth on him, and it gets him into a lot of trouble, but it's part of his, I don't know, it's really a part of who he is. I can't describe it. He's not mean, he calls out people on their BS, if that makes sense. So I really liked him a lot. I would say, I read the second book of this too. It's not as good, it's still good. So I'm going to continue the series, and I'm looking forward to more from this character and his journey. And I'm assuming, because the title of the series is called Ascendance, that means that as he ascends to his rightful place as the king of this land, because he's so cool. So anyway, I hope you read this book or give it a try, especially if you're in the mood for try a middle grade, but you're like, I don't know if I'll like it. This one is dark and cool enough for grown-ups, for sure. And just don't expect like some lusty romance. There's none of that. It's just a really good story. Highly recommend it. Next, I also forgot to mention the author's name, Jennifer A. Nielsen, for this book, and I wanted to put that in because she deserves her credit where credit is due. Thank you for writing this great little middle grade. Okay, so for number 6, before I hold up number 6, I just want to make it clear that this cover kind of gives you an impression of the book. It gives you cringe romance vibes. And that's because it's got 2 hand-drawn characters on the cover. And you know what? Maybe it's right. Maybe it is a cringe romance. However, it is so exciting and so fun. The title doesn't help. The title is also cheesy. But you know what? I had the best time reading this whole series. It was near the very beginning of 2024. And I just plowed through it. I immediately bought the whole series after reading the first and was like, boom, 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 boom. And it was a great time. And that is Taming Demons for Beginners by Annette Marie. Again, she makes the list. Apparently, I like her writing style. She created such a fun world of like summoning demons, and there's a whole magic system in there that's just really fun to learn about. It's very exciting. There are vampires, there are all sorts of creatures, and it's not a dull read, you know what I mean? I think the first book might have the most calm because it starts a little bit like, okay, you know the girl, you're getting her backstory, and then there's this whole ordeal of her making this bargain with this demon, but it's still exciting. It's still fun to read. And by all means, I shouldn't like this. It's probably checks off some boxes of things that I don't normally like. But for whatever reason, it works. Like, it really worked for me, and I really loved this book. So, I mean, look at that cover. Doesn't that scream, this is going to be a little bit of a cringy romance with a guy who's got a tail? But I mean, it's not too bad. They're not like in an embrace. It does show them that they're kind of fighting together a little bit, or they look like they've got some magic going on. Anyway, I really loved this book series. Please check it out if you're thinking, I don't know. Just surprise yourself. Give it a go. Maybe you'll hate it and you'll say, oh my God, she's stupid. Why does she like this book? But I loved it. So, neener and nanner. Okay, I've done this video 5 or 6 times. We're gonna try it again. Hopefully there will be no yelling in the background for my children. So here we go. Book 5 is a book series, or part of a book series that I think is probably one of my favorite book series of all time. I love books 1 and 2 so much. I still love this one too, don't get me wrong, but if I were to put them in a lineup, this would be in last place. That's not saying it's bad. It's still on this list. It's still great, and I was worried if they'd be able to pull off another successful book after those first 2 fantastic books. But they did. They gave me Obsidio from the Illuminae files. It's Jay Kristoff and Amy Kaufman working together to make this epic sci-fi, fantasy, space opera, whatever you want to call it. I don't know. It reads like the best science fiction film you could ever watch. It is so good and so action-packed, and there's so many twists and turns, and the twists in this really caught me. I don't normally get surprised. I feel like I can figure things out usually in books. So I usually try and figure things out. What was I saying? But it actually catches me, like, especially in books 1 and 2. It's really like, whoa, really? Whoa. It blew my mind. And I think why some people don't give this a go is there's 2 reasons. One, I think some people choose to use audiobook versions of this book, and you cannot do that. You cannot read the Illuminae files via audiobook. This is like a compilation of many files and details and photos and images and a story, a very well-written story. And if you don't get those visual cues, if you don't see it, it's not quite the same. It'll never be the same. Please, if you're going to read the Illuminae files, do it with a physical copy. You won't regret it, I promise you. The other reason is, and they do this thing, they bleep out, they like put a little black line smudge over all the swear words, but there are a lot of swear words. So your brain has to fill in all the swear words. And if you don't like swearing in books, some people are, I'm not going to judge you, but like some people are a little more uptight about that. I'm not. But if you are uptight about swearing, you're not going to like these books as much, because you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that character said that. Hey, they talk a little crude, like military barracks people do, or like just teens do, or whoever else is talking that's swearing. Like, there's a lot of bleeped out information in there, and if you're not into that, that'll probably put you off. But I will say, if you can look beyond the kind of juvenile dialogue, which I don't think is that juvenile, I think it's just, it feels right for the characters that are speaking. And if you can put down your headset and read an actual book, no offense to the audiobook readers, I know there are a lot of you out there, and especially like if you're like, you have visual impairment of some sort, like I get it. But for this book specifically, please read this trilogy with physical copies. Okay, I've done my piece. I love the Illuminae files. It's fantastic. Okay, so here we have book 4. And it did come out of left field for me. I wasn't expecting to find such a great book near the end of the year, but I did. And I will say that this book wins the prize for the best world building out of all the books that I've brought today. This world is so rich. The history is so rich. She does a great job of weaving this tapestry of events and things and cultures, and it just feels so great. And that is The Ninth Reign. This book, it is not an easy read at first, because you're left for about 100-150 pages not really knowing everything that's happening in this world. You're like, what is going on? There are elements of steampunk, there are elements of fantasy, there's elements of science fiction in this fantastic book, and it is creepy and horror and kind of horror vibes, and then there's also romance, and there's comedic moments. There's also just some great drama. I mean, it's a really great book. I would say the characters in it are flawed but unique, and she does a great job of keeping everyone in character. Their choices are the character's choices. Like, you really start to see these people for who they are, and I loved that. I really loved it. I will say I was just surprised because the world is so unique. It wasn't what I was expecting when I picked this book up, and I love that. I love being surprised by a book. Let's see here. Anything else I need to mention looking at my notes real quick before I forget, because I feel like this is too short of a clip for such a great book. But read this book. Give it a chance. Get to 150 pages before you drop it. Okay? Make it through there so you can start to see who these people are. I feel like other booktubers do a better job summarizing books than I do. I love watching those booktubers. One day I'll be better at it, but so good. Here we are, we're at the top 3. These books are phenomenal. I would say 2 of the 3 top 3 books are books that a lot of people agree are great. One of them is kind of an oddball out because it's a lesser known author, but this book is well known. Everybody loves it. It's not new. I was just putting off reading it for the longest time, and I'm so glad I read it this year because I loved it. Six of Crows, and of course The Crooked Kingdom as well. What a fun book. Oh my god, the characters in this book are so lovable. How could you read this book and not love Kaz Brekker? Really? He is my cup of tea. And this is relevant. This is very relevant. He is very similar to my very, very, very favorite character, which I read this year. And I think some of you may be able to piece it together that a broken, kind of permanently injured, very morally ambiguous character. That must be my type. That's totally my type. I love a broken character, and he's a bit broken, and it's wonderful. It's so beautiful. He's still so charming and so cool, and so, I don't know, I just love him. I love him. And I love everyone else too. Not to put the rest of the cast aside. This book was really fun. I really love multiple point of views. I love Leigh Bardugo's world. I'd say she does a better job establishing that world in her Shadow and Bone series, which I didn't like as much as this book, but that's why this one didn't win world building. But her world in general, her Grisha, her Grisha world it's incredible. It's such a really wonderful, unique, magical world. And I think people who've read this series know and love that. Love learning about a new place like that. But when you get scoundrels together like these, there's bound to be some kind of magic that happens in what they do, just because she's such a great character writer. Anyway, that's it. I think most of you have read Six of Crows, so I don't need to ramble on about it. But for me, it was a first, and I loved it. And I loved Kaz Brekker, and I loved his story. And I would love more. I want all the Kaz Brekker you could ever give. So there's that. Okay, coming in at number 2. This was a really hard choice for me, but I think it'll be obvious why I chose number 1 as number 1 when it comes to it. But for number 2, it's kind of a lesser known author. She's not even like, and likewise, I petitioned so many times to get her name, her book listed in their little likewise thing, and it only shows up as a black box now, not even an image of the book cover, which is so lame. But anyway, this book series was everything to me. when it comes to romantasy, this is my favorite. Of all the romance fantasy immersion books that you could ever have, this one takes the cake. I loved A Throne in the Dark by A.K. Caggiano. Holy cow. I got all of them here because I loved this series. Loved it. This book, if you've ever read Assistant to the Villain, it's like kind of like that in vibe, you know, like a funny, kind of quirky, magical world where the villain is just kind of funny in a way. Like he tries really hard to be super villainy and she's super kind of flirty and silly and bubbly, and they're total opposites, but it's okay because their chemistry is so good. It's so good. And basically just because it's a romantasy, it does not in any way take away from the actual plot of the book. And I feel like there's so much action and adventure thrown in that you're not just reading a boring romance where people are pining after each other in boring ways the whole time. It's not like that. It's just exciting. There are rescues, there are funny moments, there are break-ins and breakouts, and all sorts of things happen in this world, and it's fantastic. And it has spice, not in the first book, but in the other two it has quite a bit of spice. But you know what, I still loved it. Even with the spice, it was so well written for me. Maybe that says something about me, but I liked it a lot. So sue me, it was really good. I think when the book is good enough, the spice is okay. I'm like, okay, you can toss in some spice and I'll still read you and I'll love you. I will say my friend tried reading this. She didn't get past the first chapter because the first chapter is a little bit more wobbly. I'd say maybe this author struggles with first chapters because I read another book of hers and I also thought the first chapter wasn't as exciting. It didn't pull me in. But for me, I liked the first chapter because it gave me a very fun image. Like, well, it slowly crept me into this vibe of the book. Like, oh, so this book is going to be funny. At first you don't expect it, but you're like, oh, this is a comedy. And it is funny. It made me laugh out loud so many times. So anyway, book 2, A Throne in the Dark by A.K. Caggiano. I cannot recommend this book enough. I really can't. It's like the better version of Assistant to the Villain. It's a better version of anything. It's so good. So good. I want to read it again. Next year I'm going to read it again. And I don't read books twice often. Like, that's really rare. But I'm going to read this whole series again next year because I need it. I need this. I need a perfect romance for me. And this is it. Yay! Okay, we're finally done with this list except for the last one. So I did it. My very first video, my first top 10. I'm so excited and proud of myself. Anyway, if you've made it this far, this is the year I read a masterpiece. I really did. I mean, I have read lots of books in my time. Like, I've read Game of Thrones. And I love that. Obviously, it's one of my favorite books ever. I love, classics like Catcher in the Rye, which some people hate. I love Catcher in the Rye. Like, I'll read books that are masterpieces, but this year's masterpiece, this masterpiece book that I read this year was Joe Abercrombie's The Blade Itself. And so sue me. I love a grimdark. Oh my god. The characters are so despicably wonderful. Like, Glokta is my favorite character ever written. I really, really loved the character Glokta. I loved his whole story arc. I loved everything that the world threw at him. I loved his dark, sinister, kind of morbid inner dialogue that was very like, maybe I'll die, who cares, that kind of thing. But written way better than I would verbalize it. I just loved him. I thought he was brilliant. Brilliant. And the writing in this book is so good. There's a character in this book, Jezel, and he is the kind of guy you love to hate. You know, he's really just, to put it mildly, kind of a douche, you know? He really is. And his character goes through this journey, he's still a douche at his core. That's who he is. However, like, he goes through this beautiful arc of, like, being better, of getting better, being a better person than he was before. And even if he never fully gets, like, a full turnaround of his character, which would be unrealistic, he does grow, and it's just so beautiful. I really liked his story, even though his character is so normally unlikable. There is Logan Ninefingers, who was such... every character in this book series is probably the best written character of that type I've ever read. He's so good. He's so good at making people feel real. Like, all these people are so real to me. I loved all of them. I loved the Northmen. I loved Artie. I loved, oh my God, I didn't love Baez, okay? He was kind of a jerkwad, but you know what? That's his role, so there you go. But yeah, no, all of these people, they're beautiful. They're ugly beautiful. Does that make sense? And the writing is so good. The story is so good. It's so epic and grand and wonderful. And there's so many dark moments in this book, all of it. But I will say, again, with Glokta, that his person is everything to me. I loved him. I adored him. He's missing half his teeth. He's got like a curved spine a little bit, and he's got missing his toes, and he's got a big limping leg, and he can barely pull himself up, and you know, he wakes up in his own poop. Like, he's got a horrible existence for this time. They can't fix him, okay? He's stuck like this, and he knows it. And he's still hot. Does that make sense? Does that make any sense that he's hot even though he's like this? He is. To me, he's hot. He's a hot guy. He's so hot. He's so cool. So anyway, Glokta, thank you, Joe Abercrombie, for that. That was incredible. I would say of the series, I did bring it. The second book was my favorite. I really loved it. My favorite part of this book, there's like something going on in the north, and then there's something going on at this like other place kind of in the south, and one part of in the north, they've got like their whole army over there, and in the south, they just have Glokta and maybe a couple of his dudes. And at first anyway, the idea of everything is going so horribly wrong up there, but everything was going as good as it could go for this one guy in the south. It really, it was perfect. It was so perfectly thought out, and everything turned out perfectly. The ending, the last book, how could you write a book so beautiful? The ending was perfect. It wasn't like a happy-go-lucky perfect ending, but it was the kind of ending they deserved and they needed, and that felt right. Does that make sense? Everyone got the right ending, and it was just so damn good. So the First Law trilogy by Joe Abercrombie is probably currently my favorite. Game of Thrones would be if they were ever finished. I really love the Game of Thrones series, and it breaks my heart that it probably never get finished, but it probably won't. Who cares? Whatever. He's still a brilliant author, and those books were masterpieces of their own. But anyway, read this. Okay, the end.